Hello everyone, and welcome to our second Google Hangout session. Before we move you into conversation groups, I wanted to pause for a few minutes and step back from the course content and share some reflections about the assumptions I bring to this class and my excitement about this opportunity to learn together. So the assumptions I bring are ones that some of these will be repetitious, but I wanted to just pause to give us this context at this time in our learning. So the first assumption, of course, is that religions are powerful forces in human experience, and that they have and will continue to inspire the full range of human expression, from terrible acts of violence to remarkable generative and aspirational forms of hope, of peace, and of compassion. A second assumption, represented in Galton, is that there's nothing inevitable about history, that we as human beings are the shapers of history, that our actions create and reflect cultures that have embedded values that can promote forms of violence, cultural forms of violence that give structural and direct forms of violence credibility, and we also, through our actions and our agency as individuals, reflect and support cultures that can and do inspire cultural peace, representing then and supporting structural forms of peace and direct forms of peace. So the combination that religion's a powerful force and that there's nothing inevitable about history makes me want to provide opportunities for courses like this, for us to see the full range of human expression and the power that religion has in garnering and representing that full range. And so the reason I'm pausing to articulate this now is that your reflections on the discussion boards continue to be remarkably thoughtful, informed, and the conversations that you're having among yourselves are also both, again, respectful and generative. But there is a sense from some of you, not all of you, but for some of you, this sense of kind of overwhelming anxiety, in a sense, that recognizing that it feels like the power of violence is so profound and so pervasive that it feels like the efforts in relationship to then efforts regarding peace that are represented in our peace case studies are moving and inspiring, but just seem like just a drop in a small drop in an ocean of violence, so that it feels like they're important and inspiring, but just such a modest effort or response in terms of the otherwise seemingly overwhelming power of violence. And I want to first acknowledge that I understand that can feel like that, and in some ways there's no truth to this. It's just my own opinion, but I'm sharing it for what it's worth to share with you why I have such hope about courses like this. That I actually believe that those seemingly small acts of peace, of creating and sustaining and valuing cultural forms of peace, I think those actions have profound impact. And because it's only what we're representing in the course are just small representations of these kinds of activities that happen all over the world. And they often go unnoticed, and they often are not necessarily newsworthy or things that we will see or recognize or necessarily value, because on one level we might take them for granted. And they, again, the power of them often is in their local context, because they inspire people and represent acts of courage that say no to the cultural forms of violence that they are often responding to, and say, no, we have choices. We want to do something else, and we are going to use our agency, and we are going to act out of our convictions to actually stand up for something that we believe to be more valuable, more true, if you will, about human capability than the prevailing potential cultural violences that surround us. So, for what it's worth, I just want to say that what I hope this course will help give us language to do is first to understand give us more nuanced language to understand the power of religion and how it functions, to know how to ask different questions about how religion is functioning in different social and cultural contexts, and to recognize both, again, its power positively as well as negatively, and to garner and engage and feel inspired by the fact that our agency matters, even if it feels like it can't possibly make a difference against the sea of despair or violence that can sometimes and often does surround us. I believe deeply that it actually does matter, that our agency matters, and it is precisely these expressions of agency, with the courage to represent convictions that often defy the norm, that is exactly how cultures change, that is how history is made. Similarly, violence doesn't just emerge, it comes out of long histories of cultural violence that give rise to these or reflect structural and direct forms of violence. Similarly, for peace, for structural peace and direct peace. So again, my hope in this class is to help give us this language, these tools, to be able to recognize these different forces, and to be able to ask different kinds of questions about the power of religion and how it intersects with other social, cultural dimensions of human experience, and to feel inspired by the courage of these case studies of peace that we see represented in each of our units, and that we'll continue to explore as we move through the rest of the course. So even though it feels overwhelming, for what it's worth, I believe in that power tremendously, and personally feel inspired by these examples, not in the sense that they, in and of themselves, will challenge those larger cultures alone or overcome them, but I think that they represent the power that will be and does overcome those cultural forms of violence, as we've seen historically, as we see rise and fall of expressions of violence and peace in human experience. So I hope that's helpful to give, again, a context for why I'm excited about this class, why I'm so grateful again to you all for participating and for your thoughtful engagement. And if you end up starting to feel like this violence seems inevitable, I hope you'll at least pause to consider that I don't think it is, and I think many, and I think that history shows that if it was inevitable, we would not have these promising, inspiring expressions of peace that really are pervasive, but we rarely hear about them. So thanks for your attention now. Thanks for joining us for this Google on Hangout session, and I hope and trust that your conversations together will be fruitful ones. Thanks again.